Hey, sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown or not so live, but whatever it is, post-game show with Dave DuFour. Dave, we just finished watching the Pistons visiting the Warriors, and it wasn't pretty by the end. What are your initial thoughts?
The Warriors did not look particularly amazing for the first, I don't know, 2 quarters for sure, definitely in the first half, and then they had a huge third quarter, and they're the best third quarter team in the league. If you can't keep them from having a huge third quarter, you don't stand much of a chance unless you can come back from a 20-point plus deficit, like we saw with Memphis. And that's what happened. The Pistons were just not very good. They don't look like they ever practice.
Yeah. No, that's what I felt like. Their offense looked like, sort of like a bunch of guys getting together, mostly high pick and roll. And when you get against a team like the Warriors, and if you're going to run it without any movement beforehand, the defense is going to be in position and make you take pretty tough shots. I mean, they did get to the basket a little bit. They actually we noticed during the game that they were isolating on Clay in the post with some bigger players, which I'm not so sure Clay was used to getting scored on like that. But other than that, I think I mentioned it to you earlier. It felt like at some point early in the third quarter was the first time I'd seen a set, like a real set that wasn't a pick and roll that the Pistons ran in the half court.
Yeah, I think losing KCP early like they did, he's their best shooter, he's their best defender. I think that hurt him quite a bit on both ends of the floor, but particularly on offense. And they try to exploit the perceived mismatch in the middle, with Zaza Pachulia being, a little bit slow. And so when the Warriors try to switch a pick and roll, they were hoping either to have Drummond on a smaller guy. I guess who was guarding him? I think it was Clay was guarding him quite a bit. So you either have Clay trying to guard Drummond, as the roll man, or you've got Reggie Jackson blowing past Zaza Pachulia. But that just wasn't happening. Right. And then they were running the Reggie Jackson and Marcus Morris pick and roll, and they were getting a switch onto Clay like we talked about, and that was actually effective, but they went away from it. And to be honest, I didn't pay attention to why they went away from it. I just noticed that it stopped.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and that happens if you don't have, a regimented, disciplined offense. And you're absolutely right. Without KCP, that threw out the rotations. They got tired. Also, they didn't have John Lure. And believe it or not, he is a pretty vital part of their game plan as well. He plays almost 30 minutes a game, very active out there, and scores a little bit. So, once they got down, two main players, you could see the energy wasn't there, and the shots that they were giving up in the first half, I would think that the Warriors felt pretty good about those, that they didn't go down, and so it's just a matter of time until they get a little ignition going. And man, it's really pretty. I got to tell you, I don't know, people are hate the Warriors, they don't like the Durant decision or whatever, but it's hard to imagine people would look at that and be like, oh man, that sucks, or I can't watch that when they start moving the ball like that, right?
Yeah, I'm going to call this the KD buy-in game. That's how it felt to me. It was KD fully embraced the ball movement that the Warriors want. And I even said it to you in our little chat that we have during these games. He was catching the ball, and he was either immediately moving it to an open man, or he was attacking the hoop. It didn't really. I mean, let's see. What did he score tonight? He scored 25 points. Mm-hmm. He was plus 24. So it actually did equate to some points.
Yeah, but on 15 shots. I mean, that's insane. It's the 10 for 15 from the field, 3 for 5 from 3. And it's beautiful, easy.
Absolutely. And there was one sequence where he's pushing the ball down court in transition, and it was like, pick your poison. Do you stop the KD drive to the hoop? Do you pick up Curry, or do you pick up Clay? And he found Clay in the corner for a 3. And it was just, this is what he signed up for. This is what the Warriors signed him for, was this whole nightmare matchup. And now you hope that game, where they lost to Memphis, that this is the big turnaround for them as far as KD and the offense is concerned.
Right. Well, by the way, and it's easy for KD to buy in and do all that when you're playing the Pistons. And that's what we're going to have to find out when they play the Cavaliers come Monday. Now, the thing with the Cavaliers is they haven't looked very good. Like the last game I watched them the other night, I'm forgetting who they played. They lost, right? They got beat.
They lost to Utah, and then they lost to the Blazers.
Oh,
so
okay,
they've lost
the Blazers.
2 straight.
Yeah, and they didn't have any energy, and like almost the point where I wanted to ask like a beat writer that I knew or something like, what's going on in the locker room? Something seems up, like they're not interacting nicely with each other. I don't know what it was, but I suspect that it doesn't matter. They're going to get up for that game either way.
Yeah. Well, the Blazers lost. You know what? I'll give them a pass on that one. Second night of a back-to-back,
Okay.
and they didn't get into Portland until the day of the game because of the snowstorm that shut down the airport. Now the Blazers didn't either, but it is, and they were also second night of a back-to-back. But the Blazers are going to get up a little bit more for the Cavs than the Cavs are for the Blazers. I mean, these are still human beings that we're dealing with, as much as we want to treat them like robots. So I'll throw that game out. The Utah game, I think, was a little bit more telling. I think that their defensive issues are kind of coming to the forefront. They're missing J.R. Smith, believe it or not, on the defensive end.
For what it's worth, I did see Kyle Korver in there against Portland, and he had a couple of like pretty good defensive possessions, kept the guy in front, made them kick the ball back out or whatever. But you're right, like J.R. Smith does have a different level of defensive ability when he is doing it, and which is not all the time. And it's weird to think that if he comes back, that's going to solve their defensive issues. I don't think that necessarily makes me feel like that's going to do it. Right.
It may not. It may not. But I think that's a part of it. And Kyle Korver is not a bad defender. I mean, he's a smart positional defender. He's also massive. He's 6'8".
Yeah.
So he's big. So that helps too. But I think that there's also a little bit of, kind of the same thing the Warriors are dealing with, a little bit of boredom. The Cavs are going to coast, and they're still going to be the 1 seed. They're going to get up for big games. And I just don't think the Blazers were a big game for them.
I hear you. And then they got stung, as they have in this season a couple of times when they haven't really taken him seriously. So that said, it's in Golden State. It's on Martin Luther King. It's a weird starting time as well. So that always seems to screw up with people, especially like those early Sunday games and these weird games, these weird start times. So that's the question. What do you feel about that game going in? Who's gonna win that one?
Well, off the top of my head, I'm going to say the Warriors. I mean, it's a home game, and I think the Warriors will probably be favored just because it's a home game.
Well, it's a grudge match too, right? Like
absolutely. And the Warriors are hot right now. Like, they're playing really good basketball. Steph Curry's still having a good season. Like, this whole thing, like, he's in a slump. I wish I could have slumps like Steph Curry's slump. He's still having a very good season. Now Russ is kind of blowing the world away, but Steph Curry's still, having a great season.
Yeah.
And the last 6 or 7 games or so, he's been fantastic. Tonight he looked much more comfortable off the dribble. You actually noticed that he was shooting a lot more from the mid-range off the dribble, which was just kind of in his natural rhythm on the offense rather than taking the huge step back to try to make sure he jacks up the three. And I think that's important for him. He's a rhythm shooter. So, I think the Warriors, I wouldn't be shocked if they blew them out. I would not be shocked.
Wow. Well, they're both going to be well rested. I was just looking it up to see when they're playing, and it looks like Cleveland plays on Friday. And that's I think nobody plays on Saturday or Sunday before that game. So I think that shouldn't be the issue. The weather is nice here, so there shouldn't be any delays, I would imagine, getting there. So at least we have that to fall back on. And I think you're right. Well, like the video I just did looking at the Warriors offense as part of a 4-team analysis was, it was shocking that, Steph Curry's shooting woes off the dribble from 3 are, significant. And I think people might sort of picture that in the transition game, where in reality what I was seeing was a lot of pick and roll threes pull up that were not going in and worthy of more exploration, which I'll probably do like next week. But the other thing that was kind of surprising to me was Klay Thompson on spot ups is very pedestrian this year. And all of his shots look very good, most of them. And so that's an interesting concern because if both those guys are going to struggle from some of their meat and potato shots, that's a problem. That's going to be a thing.
When you were digging into those numbers, did you look into how he's been? Because remember, Klay started out, the first 2 weeks were horrific for him. Yeah. Were you able to sift through those numbers and kind of throw out the first 2 weeks?
I can't do that on Synergy like that. I don't think I can. I've never been able to find a place where I can do sliders, but I can count it, and I will, because I'm going to do another thing on Klay as well. So we'll look at it, but from my eye, having called up, I don't know, 30 or 40 of his last spot up shots. There's a lot of misses in there and a lot of open misses. So you have to imagine that's going to change. He will get it back and figure it out. And traditionally he's been, he's like 68th percentile, I think is what it was, something around there. And traditionally he's been, in the 80s or 90s in spot ups. So you have to imagine that's going to go back up. But, you never know. The slumps can last and it gets in your head and you don't focus. And it could be a thing that rears its ugly head in those moments when they need him, in those fourth quarters.
Yeah. I mean, he was good tonight, though. I mean, his spot ups looked really good tonight. I was actually surprised when you told me those numbers. And I've watched a lot of Warriors games, but it just didn't stand out as something that was bad. This is how good the Warriors are.
Right.
Like they are this team that, what is wrong with the Warriors? And they won by 20. They more than any team I can ever think of. And maybe that's the whole 24-hour news cycle.
Well, they didn't blow them out to the third quarter, though, man. They were struggling.
Right? Yeah, they should have blown them out from before the game started.
Right.
But again, I mean, the Warriors are a third quarter team. Like we know this. Their halftime must be amazing. Whatever they're doing at halftime must be incredible.
They probably have women playing harps and sitting in robes and stuff, or I don't know, eating grapes. It must be.
Yeah, being fanned with palm leaves and things like that. Yeah, that. I mean, whatever works, man. But they're fantastic in the third quarter.
The question is, do you really think it's like adjustments? Now, one of the things is, it almost is like they should lose the tip so they can get the first possession in the third quarter because Steve Kerr's after timeout plays are so good that you'd want to be able to start the half doing that, on a nice play. They got a nice one with JaVale. And it was actually the second play because the Pistons got the first play, but they obviously had set it up beforehand. And it's a beautiful pick and roll with JaVale. He's rolling, pressure release to Draymond. Draymond just throws it up and JaVale just dunks it. I mean, beautiful spacing, timing, rhythm, all those things. I have to imagine that's the one thing they probably work on the most is maybe these out of timeout plays.
Well, yeah, they've been running rip for 3 seasons now, and it still works. So part of this is just
Describe RIP for all of the people who might not know what RIP is for
So it's a simple back screen for a lob or for a pass from the wing. It's a really simple play, and it's one of the most diagrammed plays on YouTube that I've ever seen. I mean, it's all over the place, and it's simple, but it's sort of there's a dummy action where they think that the screen is actually being set for Steph Curry, but he's setting a back screen for Draymond or. I don't know. Have they run it with Durant? I know they like to run it with Livingston. They run it with a guy like that, and he cuts down to the hoop and catches the pass from the wing from Iguodala or Clay, and it's a beautiful, easy, simple play, but it just shouldn't work the way it does, and yet it does.
Oh yeah, I mean the best part is when Steph Curry sets that back screen because most likely his man and the guy who he's screening are going to jump to the cutter to the basket. And then the action generally is he comes around a handoff or something wide open, and because he does hit those screens pretty well. In fact, that is probably another worthy of a breakdown is how good Steph is at setting off ball screens. He really gets in there and lays some wood on people. And so it makes sense that it is a good play. It's very viable, very difficult to defend, especially when you set those good screens. And so I know they got one, I think, with Clay cutting back door off of a sideline out of bounds, something like that. But yes, it's a beautiful poetry to watch when those Warriors get those things going. And like we said in my breakdown, they're a very big anomaly because they attack with the cut and off of screens much more than anybody else. Certainly of the top 4 offenses in the league, they're way above on those actions and very low on pick and roll. And which is a delightfully old school way of attacking. But when you got what you have with those shooters, I guess let me ask you this: the question here is, could you have an offense with lesser shooters that relies on cuts and off screens as much?
You could, but the shooters, what takes it to the elite level is the fact that they can shoot. Because if all you're worried about are cuts and backdoor cuts, then you can sag off a little bit and you can actually be ready and you can anticipate those cuts. But with these shooters, you actually have to stay out on these guys close. You got a lot of times in a denial. But the other thing is you're also able to take advantage of hard closeouts.
Right. Yeah.
And so you can actually attack the closeout, which is just this is why this offense, when it starts humming like it did tonight, it's so hard to stop because you literally have to pick your poison. And when they get Zaza off the court is when they really get things going. I mean, not that Iguodala is an amazing offensive player, but he hits enough threes to keep the defense honest, and he'll shoot them, which is big. Just the fact that he will shoot them. Right. Even if he's shooting 32%, if he shoots enough, he's going to score points. But he's a great cutter, and he's a really good passer. So he's got two of the three things necessary. Draymond is an amazing finisher. So when he's attacking a closeout, good luck. I mean, that's 2 points.
Right. Yeah, and also with Iguodala, I think when the game gets going and the pace gets moving, like they kind of forget, like you're just trying to close out anybody, and then you kind of realize, oh wait, I should be thankful that he shoots those threes, and yet they fly at him sometimes, and those are the moments where you like screw up on your closeouts because it's going so fast, and then you bring in a guy like Ian Clark, who's just like the rifleman out there, just nailing shots left and right, like a Patty Mills kind of guy, and it's really fun to watch, and I hope it's inspiring to like lower levels too, because I believe at that 19-9 line in high school, you can recreate that a little bit if you have lesser talent.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The cutting, in high school level. I mean, I coach high school, so the lack of cutting in high school these days. When I was playing, everything was motion and cutting. That was it. Like every offense was motion. And your job, when you got rid of the ball, you were screening or you were cutting. And now you don't see a lot of that. And I don't know, there's a lot of pick and roll, which is fine, but there's nothing else happening.
Yeah.
Very easy to defend.
And you're describing the Pistons offense.
Exactly. Yeah, it's super easy to defend.
And it's funny, when I was coaching high school, we would have a problem where we'd run a lot of great motion, and the defense would be so bad that it would be good. Like they would just be out of position and sort of sunk in the lane, and then like they're not supposed to be there, and yet they are, and so we can't get the cutters. But what we didn't have in our mind's eye, this is back like in 2000, we were running our offense, was okay, they're not there because we reopened on the 3-point line, and we just weren't spacing to that spot yet, and we would have gotten wide open shots on that. And so an interesting conundrum, but that's why I'm hoping that as we go forward, this is what I've been looking for my whole life, is to see how the NBA is doing it and then being able to translate that different ways to the high school would be very exciting.
Well, the other thing the Warriors are great at, which I try to teach my players to do, is when the defense is overcommitting on a ball denial, to take the blind pig and just go backdoor, and then every single player that the Warriors play, even Zaza, they can hit that cutter going backdoor. They can all throw that pass
right
underneath, and that is such a huge skill. And the NBA is full of guys that can do it, but no one has a team that top to bottom every guy can do it.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I don't trust Andre Drummond to throw that pass.
No, absolutely not. Right, that's the thing. And so, if you have it, you got to use it, and they do. And it's amazing how well they all can sort of fit in. And they don't probably practice like all the progressions. They work on their philosophy and their sort of spacing and movement, and they get a lot of organic stuff that comes out of just like the basic principles, but things they haven't practiced. And that's when it gets exciting, because I'm sure Steve Kerr is looking at it going, wow, like we never really worked on that, but that's a great move. Maybe we'll save that and we'll work on it later for the playoffs. So, it's just the way to play basketball. I don't want to sort of, belabor the we love the Warriors or anything like that. But, when they play like they did tonight, it is something to behold. Who knows? We could be completely opposite. Because remember, there were some awful turnovers tonight also.
There were.
Unforced. It's the unforced turnovers. It's like sometimes if it's under pressure, I get it, no problem. But some of these are just like, they're just careless, and it's frustrating. Yeah,
one that really, like anytime the ball hits a guy in the hands and it goes, and he loses it, that drives me crazy. Mm-hmm. It's not that hard to catch a basketball. One that stands out, I think Draymond threw a pass to Klay Thompson, and it just went off his hands, went out of bounds. Mm-hmm. And, it was just, that's a mental mistake. He was thinking about turning to shoot before he caught the ball. It's just like football. You can't turn upfield until you catch the ball. You got to catch the ball first.
Right.
That's got to be a priority. Steph had 6 turnovers in the first quarter, and it looked like it was going to be a sloppy game, but he had 12 points.
One of them at the very end of the quarter, I think, was like a throwaway,
Right.
whatever. So yes,
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, and if he had gotten that pass to go,
oh my God,
it would have been amazing.
yeah.
One of my favorite things that happened, and you brought up Ian Clark. Ian Clark, when he had the back-to-back threes at the end of the first quarter, on the second three, and this just shows you the confidence that not only the staff and his teammates have in him, but that he's gotten himself, and this is why he's going to get paid by somebody this summer. All right, so Steph gets the steal, hits Ian Clark right at the break, and then Steph goes to the wing, and Steph is wide open. I mean, there isn't a guy 10 feet near him, and Ian Clark's still very open. I mean, there's no one closing out, nothing. But this is an instance where last season, I feel like that's an automatic pass to Steph. Mm-hmm. Ian Clark took that shot and he hit it, and Steph was as excited as Ian Clark was. Like, that's fantastic. That guy he's gonna win them a playoff game.
Okay, I
for
can
sure.
see that. Yeah. He'll come and have a big game. They'll need it, and he'll do it. Yeah. We're going to wrap up. I'm going to leave you with this thing because I know the TNT announcers were making a big deal about how the Pistons were hurting them inside and getting offensive rebounds. And what you end up seeing is the Pistons got 9 offensive rebounds to the Warriors 6. And overall, they got 40 to 37 rebounds advantage. But what mitigates that, and by the way, the Pistons ended up with one more turnover than the Warriors. But what mitigates this rebounding issue is the 3-point shooting. And so the Warriors ended up having 15 threes made compared to the Pistons 6. Okay. That's 27 points. You can't possibly make that up with offensive rebounding. Even if you tried, you couldn't make that up. And only if you can, the only way you can make it up is with a huge offensive rebounding and a huge turnover gap. Then maybe you're tied. You know what I mean? So that's a real problem with today's NBA. Is you cannot afford to get outscored by 27 points from the 3-point line and have any hope of being close. At all. That's the reality, and that's what they've shaped, and that's why they don't have to worry about the rebounding so much.
Yep, those putbacks are still only worth 2 points.
Absolutely, and if you get them. So, well, Dave, thanks for coming on the show and breaking this down for us. A fun game, but another blowout, unfortunately, for us, but we'll get a good one. Monday, we're going to do Monday's game, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Okay,
absolutely.
We'll be right
Cavs
back here.
Warriors.
Maybe we'll have it live on Periscope if I get my guy in here to get it going. But other than that, we'll do it the same way we did it tonight, and we'll make it happen. But then stay tuned, sports fans, because in the future we're going to have a live show broadcast live to Facebook Live and to Periscope. You're not going to want to miss it. It'll be just like this, but even better and live. So don't forget, sports fans, at BBallBreakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in? Are you in, Dave?
Yes, I am.